gone hand in hand with imperialism, taking over other countries' natural resources, property, and exploiting people for labor while restricting access to their material needs. It's driven by finance, capital, and by militarism, and relies on patriarchy and national oppression to survive. By nature, it is in a constant state of crisis to expand and increase profits, and it does this by creating new markets and demands exploiting natural resources to make the minority rich while the rest of us suffer the environmental and human consequences. War, militarization, and global trade continue to be some of the tactics used by imperialist nations to secure natural resources, but related and complicit with these tactics is the conquest of women in those countries, who are key to influencing the labor force, economy, and culture. Rape, prostitution, and trafficking are military strategies to destroy and control opposing ethnic groups and communities. And it's also part of dehumanizing the inferior class and taps into the sexual inequality that already exists between men and women. The Japanese army trafficked the comfort women from across Asia in World War II. Rest and recreation centers for the pleasure of US soldiers were established in Thailand during the Vietnam War. These have given rise to social imbalances seen elsewhere between race and sex, and countries have been left with a lasting social, political, and economic pressure. Globally, the conflict between countries for land resources and political power continue, and this is exacerbated by worsening weather extremes and disasters, and they also continue at the expense of women, disproportionately women of color. Women are also a huge proportion of the vulnerable people that will bear the brunt of climate change. Racialized women constitute much of the world's poor. We contribute the least to climate change, but are affected the harshest and the soonest, in part due to the caregiving roles that are imposed on women. The UN estimates 80% of people displaced by climate change are women. The European heat waves of 2003, 75% more women died than men. In the Bangladesh cyclone of 1991, 5 times more women died than men. 77% of deaths caused by the Indian Ocean tsunami of 2004 were women. Possible reasons for the imbalance, people say, are that men were more likely to be taught to swim, but women were left responsible for children and relatives during evacuation. Women are already vulnerable to male violence and exploitation, and it's made worse by climate change-induced natural disasters. The example that comes to mind is the Typhoon Hyer in 2013. Over 4 million people were displaced. Traffickers recognized the opportunity, and women and girls were sex trafficked to Fields Avenue, a red light district that had been established to serve the men stationed at Clark Air Base, an American base that operated until the mid-1900s. Similarly, human trafficking increased by 20 to 30% during natural disasters between 1990 and 2011 in Nepal. Women also bear the brunt of capitalism. It's not only commodified earth and its resources, but it is done so on the backs of women. Cindy Lurondell notes that care work is often women's work, childcare and reproduction. It doesn't figure into economic models, yet it is the work that is truly life-sustaining. Not only has capitalism harnessed the cultural pressures on women brought on by our sexual inequality to fuel mass-produced fashion industries and toxic beauty practices, but are produced by the slave labor of women and children in poor countries. The global sex trade, stemming from a history of war, imperialism, and violence against women, demonstrates that this commodification extends to our very bodies for the profit and pleasure of men. Women's poverty also leaves us out of democratic processes, while our labor globally and in the household is used to drive economic development. There's widespread recognition that ending poverty has to figure into a global strategy for the future and is a central point in the Sustainable Development Goals agenda, alongside Goal 5, Gender Equality, and Goal 13, Climate Action. Asian Women for Equality began a panel series about a guaranteed livable income because we believe that promising anti-poverty policies like this need the influence of key groups like women, like the racialized and the poor. Canada is a wealthy country committed to human rights and equality, and we have an obligation to offer women viable alternatives so that violence and inequality is not something women must endure. We believe guaranteed livable income is that alternative. As Canadian feminists Lee Lakeman, Angela Miles, and Linda Christian Ruffman wrote in 2004, a guaranteed livable income would be a commitment to collective survival and in recognition of women's labor and our rightful share of the wealth. So we host these panels as feminist platforms for discussions about guaranteed livable income to bring academia, grassroots, and frontline groups together, to bring fields together and build alliances and share theory with each other. Now, we don't know for sure if there's ever been an open public discussion on the link between basic income and environmental sustainability, but we think it's time, because we see guaranteed livable income as an avenue towards curbing capitalism as a system and neoliberalism as policy. We see it as a fundamental shift away from our culture of maximizing profits, consumerism, exploitation, and harmful industries toward a world of mutuality, sustainable living, and beneficial human activities for both people and the environment. And the women in my group continue to think about guaranteed livable income and what it means for society when we're also having to oppose increased privatization, individualism that blames women for their own poverty. And as a group with diverse backgrounds and experiences, we know that fighting male violence in favor of promoting sexual and racial equality would have to address women's economic insecurity in some way. And we have an obligation to offer women viable alternatives so that harmful industries are not something we have to resort to. And we believe also that considering a guaranteed livable income might also shed light on the alternative economic systems that Dr. Peever says we need to consider so that we can actually sustain our lives and our environment. Thanks.
Thank you very much. How are we doing with our other person? And Cathy's not here, okay. So, the second person is Mollie Anderson. Mollie.
Hi. Thank you, Sarah. That was really interesting. My name is Mollie Anderson. I'm the National Director of Put a Price on It Canada. We are focused on educating and engaging Canadian post-secondary students about the merits of fighting climate change with carbon pricing. I became involved in the climate change policy conversation about 5 years ago when I was still in university myself, and I began working with a group called Canadians for Clean Prosperity, which was represented here earlier today by Mark Cameron. I've been asked to join you today, and I have decided to use my time to speak a little bit about engaging young people in the climate change conversation. And I'm going to focus on issues framing the gap between the sort of highly politically engaged take on these issues and what the rest of the population, particularly the population between 18 and 29, where they fall in terms of their understanding of these issues. I'm also going to talk a little bit about how to galvanize young people and how to make them feel included in this discussion. So, Put a Price on It Canada's main goal is to educate and empower young Canadians about the merits of carbon pricing as a tool to reduce carbon emissions. 18 to 29-year-olds are the typical cohort that you can find represented in Canadian polling data, so that's the one that I'm going to be working with today. This group is unique from their predecessors for a number of reasons. One of them being that they are entering the economy at a highly unstable time. They have more student debt. They have considerably less job and retirement security and less access to affordable housing. So we are pretty anxious, you might say. We also vote. In the 2015 election, youth turnout at the polls skyrocketed by 20%, and millennials can be credited with giving the current government the majority that they are enjoying right now. We are also, according to the latest report from the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, about to inherit a massive additional financial burden and the biggest threat facing security, life, and prosperity around the world. More so than any other demographic, 18 to 29-year-olds support action on climate change. The majority of us, when asked about the reason to act on this issue, rank moral responsibility as our #1 motivating factor. However, this does not mean that young people are not contending with policy priorities and financial concerns that appear more pressing to them, but I'm going to get back to that later. When asked to rank their preferred solutions, 18 to 29-year-olds actually often choose rules and regulations as their top-ranked method of reducing emissions, despite the fact that Nobel Prize-winning economists say that the most effective and least economically distortionary way of doing that is through carbon pricing. This is surprisingly true of most Canadians, actually, who typically rank other methods of reducing emissions as more desirable than carbon pricing. To someone who communicates about carbon pricing for a living, that obviously points to a significant gap between the political or elite conversation and what the average Canadian understands or believes about carbon pricing. When we look at the numbers for 18 to 29-year-olds, less than 50% of them actually feel confident in their knowledge about carbon pricing. They are also the least likely demographic in Canada to be aware of the current pricing landscape in their province of origin. But there is a silver lining to this information, which is that when they're presented with an explanation of what carbon pricing does, young people are far more optimistic, and they're far more optimistic about both the intentions and the effectiveness of pricing carbon, which leads me to what we do at Put a Price on It. Obviously, what I've been talking about up until now indicates that there's a considerable need to educate and motivate young people about carbon pricing, and there are a few ways to go about this. The first is to simply explain it. In layman's terms, what does it do? Why does it work? Where does it work? And how can it be designed so that it does not hinder or exacerbate the existing goals or concerns that young people have about their futures? Because we know that young people are the least suspicious and the most enthusiastic about carbon pricing, we can be honest with them about why it works and what it will deliver for society in the future. Remembering that one of the most powerful tools for activism on this issue is your vote. So if students understand carbon pricing and are educated about its importance, that will influence the candidates that they choose in upcoming elections. Next, I kind of want to talk about where we talk to young people. The first place is on campus, where young people get together, collect and share ideas, learn new things, and are generally pretty open-minded and excited. There are a number of ways to access young people on campus. You could host screenings, for example, of the Years of Living Dangerously series, which is a fantastic series about climate change, if any of you have seen it. You can host meetups between students, or you can organize talks with some guest speakers that might be able to share information that they have about carbon pricing with students. This year, Put a Price on It Canada is actually teaming up with a group called Youth Climate Lab to target campuses that don't have existing Put a Price on It chapters in provinces that have more reticent premiers about pricing carbon. So we're hosting these labs in high traffic areas like common rooms, dorms, and club fairs, where we can engage and chat with students, offer them a variety of resources, and have them propose their own ideas for how to empower young Canadians on the issue of climate change. Whatever and wherever you're attempting to reach young people on campus, I recommend offering them free stuff. Swag is good, but actually the biggest draw in my experience is snacks or coffee. And as I can attest to my own years in university, I was hungry and tired all the time. So the other great place to reach young people, and I'm sure this will come as a surprise to no one in this room, is on the internet. Young people are digital natives. 85% of them check their social media every day, and roughly 90% of them own a smartphone at this point, which is terrifying. You might groan about collectivism, but if young people are online and young people vote, it's an extremely important place to place your message. Just ask the federal government. They did a lot of that in the last election. The more clear educational information that you put online and put on social media to target at young people, the more likely they are to understand the issues, to talk about them or share them with their peers, and ultimately to indicate their support for the policy via their vote. The last thing I want to talk about is how to frame this conversation. So young people, as I mentioned earlier, are dealing with a lot of other challenges in their day-to-day lives, just like most of us are. But questions like, will I find the right career? Will I be able to buy a house? Will I finish my dissertation or get good grades this semester? They're all very valid questions and very valid things that end up interrupting the sort of course of activism that young people take. So I propose that there are two solutions to this. The first is to really effectively communicate the immediacy of the issue and to emphasize the moral imperative to act and highlight the future repercussions of inaction. If your concerns are about the affordability of housing or the ability to own a car, obviously insurance rates are not going to be very favorable for you if climate change is not mitigated in the near future. It's also really nice to explore the positive aspects of a low carbon future for young people. So that includes things like job creation in sustainable fields, fewer health concerns for them or their children, or greater access to effective public transit. The second really good way to motivate students and to help them in terms of advocacy is to make it easy for them. So if you want young people to get involved, give them the right tools to understand, use, and then act. At Put a Price on It, we've created a pretty robust library of online resources about carbon pricing, suggestions for how to start a club, host an event, or different types of events that you can host. And we do our best to make sure that we're perennially available to support the efforts of all of our chapters, including supplying them with print materials, branded resources, templates, or whatever it is they might need. So thank you very much for listening to me and for inviting me here today to talk about this particular facet of fighting climate change in Canada. It's obviously quite near to my heart, being both a young person that will be confronted with climate change in the near future, and also as someone who deeply believes in the power of young people to impact politics and change the world for the better. So the last thing I'll say is that if you or anyone you know is a young person passionate about this issue, I really encourage you to visit us at our website, putapriceonit.ca, and figure out how you can get involved. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Our third. So Steve is online. He's at the airport somewhere, so he's online. He can hear me. Steve, I'd like you to introduce yourself. That's the format we're using. So introduce yourself and go ahead. It's all yours, sir. Can you hear me?
Hello, can everyone hear me? I suddenly lost the audio from the conference.
Okay. We're saying that we've asked the panelists to introduce themselves. We've asked the panelists to introduce themselves and to speak at that point. Tell us what you do, where you're from, and what you're going to say.
Could one of the panelists wave if I'm supposed to be speaking? Okay, great. Okay, so I am supposed to be speaking.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Steve. Thanks so much for doing this. I couldn't be in Ottawa in person. My apologies for that. I run the 3% Project. We're a youth-led, youth-serving, sustainable development organization that's traveling across the entire country multiple times to engage 1 million students in 500 high schools. I think the price, put a price on carbon is working with university students. We're working with high school students, and I'm currently here in Calgary. This week we're going to 7 different high schools in Alberta, and we're visiting 1 to 2 schools every week. 1 to 2 schools every day. About 70% of our tour route is in rural Indigenous communities with less than 100,000 people living in that town. So that I guess the specialty that I focus on is communicating climate solutions to those who don't want to hear or engage on climate change. And I have the conversation without necessarily bringing up climate change to propel people to act on climate solutions. And yeah, so I want to share a couple things about the work we're doing and lessons learned from that. Then I guess we'll move on to the panel as well. Because I have the screen, I will also share the screen that I have. I think you can see the screen there. So what we do is we travel across the country, visiting the schools, doing the assemblies for the entire school on climate solutions. The narrative in a very short summary is we look at the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals without bringing up the UN. So I present the 17 goals and say, this is the future we want. We want a future that is more inclusive, equitable, prosperous, and sustainable. And there are 2 systematic challenges to get there. First one is the rise of exponential technologies like the 4th Industrial Revolution, for example, and that's something that our generation is creating. And the second set of challenges is climate change that the previous generations have started, passed down to us. And every generation throughout history has to deal with both of these challenges, something that they're creating and something that's been passed down from the previous generations. The caveat for our generation, though, is that both of them are existential challenges. So how do we leverage the technological solutions that are coming out to solve climate change, to get the stupid problem out of the way so we can focus on creating the kind of future we want? So we look at that kind of narrative and present about 60 different climate solutions in 5 categories of energy efficiency, renewable energy, sustainable lifestyle, policy advocacy, and awareness. And afterwards, we work with the student leaders in the school, and that's really up to the school to decide who those are. They generally are like environment group or social justice club or student council. And we work with those students to identify what they want to do in the school. And then they're required to engage clubs that have nothing to do with environment and go listen to why they would like to be involved or what they would like to see in terms of climate solutions in the community. And I think this is one of the big pieces that's missing, whether it's listening to the community or the empathy or that genuine engagement that happens before the projects take off, and helping students to learn why an athletic club would be interested in climate change, why a chess club or robotics club has a stake in climate change, and how they can be a part of the solutions to climate change really helps bringing the community together. And most importantly, once the students actually do work on a project and roll it out, now the rest of the community is more willing to participate because they were part of deciding what to work on. Then we focus heavily on impact analysis. A big part of problem I have with high school culture is that we've built a culture of celebrating anything students do, regardless of its results, as long as they're well-meaning. And that doesn't work out once they leave high school and into university or workplaces. So we have a very heavy focus on building employable skills for students, whether that's data collection, doing baseline studies, figuring out whether they've actually made a difference. We also found that students are generally much more happy to know that they've made a difference as opposed to hoping that they made a difference. And doing data collection and studies to show that they're doing something is incredibly valuable. And these are some of the skills that we're teaching. So for example, in Lytton, BC, which is a very small community at the border of BC and Alberta and the mountains, mostly Indigenous community. And there's one high school there called Kumsheen Secondary School, and no recycling company comes to pick up the garbage, so everything goes into landfill. And that's something the students wanted to work on. Then by talking to some other students, they were complaining. I'm sorry about the announcements. Some of the students were complaining that they don't like eating frozen food in the cafeteria all the time. Because the community is so remote, they only have frozen or processed food in the cafeteria. So what the students came up with was we want to build a potato garden in the school, using the compost as a fertilizer to grow the potatoes, feed it in the cafeteria, and kind of having that cycle. But there was no garden or horticulture class, so we connected some of the local community organizations to come and teach the teachers on creating a horticulture course and building a potato garden. And then now they're doing that in Lacombe, Alberta. Students changed all the lights to LED lights. That's not the interesting part. The interesting part is they actually measured the electricity usage per kilowatt hour before the LED and after. And then they did a scaled up financial model projection for the entire school board and said, if you were to change LED lights for every school in your school board within 3, 5, 10 years, this is how much money you would save. This is the financial cost of not doing the project. So these are some of the practical skills that we are helping students build. But at the core of all this, me personally, why I got involved in this and started all of this about 2 years ago is civic engagement. I strongly believe that the lowest hanging fruit and highest return on investment of climate action is democratic participation. And particularly young people are the easiest group or with the highest potential to transfer over. If I can also share my screen again. About a couple of years, 3 years ago, Yale University and University of Montreal did a study of climate opinion of Canadians. 79% of Canadians believe the Earth is warming. Only 44% think it's mainly because of people. And that goes down to 23% in certain ridings across Canada. And recently, just earlier this year, Ecofiscal Commission did a similar study basically confirming the result of this. And you've heard this study cited yesterday and today as well, so I won't go into that again. But what is absolutely clear is that there's a very big gap in climate literacy and climate action of what Canadians want to do. So one of the things that we have been focusing on is to get the federal government to create a $10 million federal budget line per year on communication of collective imagination on clean future for civil society, industry associations, and local authorities, so that more people would be communicated the benefits of climate solutions. For example, Fort McMurray with Buffalo area in Alberta has banned the use of plastic bags for years, And I'm sure if they communicated back to the public, whether through TV ads or posters or in their local newspaper, the health and economic benefits of using less plastic bags on the community, I'm sure they would be less sour about it. And that would be the case whether it's with price on pollution or electric vehicles or various other climate solutions that we can communicate back to the public. And especially in light of the fact that in the previous administration, $16.5 million each year was designated by the federal government as responsible resource management advertising towards oil and gas companies to communicate on advertising on the benefits of using oil and gas, which most of them are just flat out lies. So it's very helpful for the federal government to be communicating the good work that they're already doing and the good work that they intend to do and its benefits back to the community. So these are some of the lessons that we had learned, what we're doing, and how we've translated that into kind of lobbying effort that we've been doing. And yeah, I'd love to share more about it and listen to what others are working on engaging children and youth on this issue.
Thank you very much. Steve, can you hear me now? Can you hear us? Can't hear us, okay. It'll be pretty hard to ask him a question.
Sorry, I can't hear you guys for some reason.
Yes, something okay. Questions from the audience? Elaine.
Hi there. If you look at the audience that you're speaking to, you may notice that most of us are not either high school students or between the ages of 18 and 29. So I'm wondering, how can we help you? Either put a price on it or...
Mollie, you want to start?
Yeah, sure. I mean, Put a Price on It works in conjunction with Citizens Climate Lobby on a lot of efforts. I think if you find yourself, I know you do a lot of lobbying activities, but if you're talking to young people that are involved with Citizens Climate Lobby, I would recommend using some of the communication strategies that I outlined. The other thing that would always be amazing is that if you know any young people that you think might be interested in helping us out or promoting this stuff on campus, to like direct them to our website and we can give them the resources they need, that would be very helpful as well.
Or if you want to donate food, right?
Yeah, that would be great. If you have like a gallon of coffee, that would be excellent as well.
Sarah.
I guess I qualify as a youth still. But
Are you under 60?
I think so. Yeah.
Then you're still a youth.
But I mean, an observation, I think, as somebody that was recruited into grassroots feminist activism at the age of 19, I think when I saw that there was really strong leadership in the community, and there was a way for me to join and to be politicized, and that kind of mentorship really mattered for me. And now here I am 10 years later. So that's anyways what did it for me.
Thank you. Yeah. Steve.
I did not know that the audience average age, since I can't really see the audience. There are two things that you could help us very practically. One is mentorship, just like what the previous panelist said. Mentorship between the intergenerational partnership is absolutely crucial. The only reason why our organization was able to start off and continue to run is because of a relentless mentorship that was provided by people of ages between 60 and 80 on our board and volunteers, providing us very, very practical mentorship. Because while young people have incredible passion and energy and very good reading of what's happening within our age group, we also lack some very practical things like experiences or how to get things done, or to look at relationships or networks or funding sources, or just generally knowing other people in the areas, because mainly for the reason that we simply haven't been around for a while. So that mentorship and support is incredibly helpful. Second one,
You got that.
particular, yeah. Second one, particularly for my organization, and I'm sure is the case for others as well, making the connections to the organizations really help. We're big part of our program is trying to convince schools so that we can go into those schools. The urban schools are very happy to have us over because they already care about this and they're already on board with climate solutions. But the rural communities that generally don't care about climate change or don't even want to hear the words climate change, it's very hard for us to get in there. So if you have connections to these schools, I'd love to get in touch and have the introductions to go into the schools to engage the students.
Thank you. Question.
Hi, thank you all for your presentations. My name is Mary Blake. I'm the group leader for the London, Ontario chapter of Citizens Climate Lobby. And I have a bunch of volunteers from Western University. So the average age of my chapter is a little bit younger than the average age of this audience, I think. And I mean, for the most part, it's been great. I've been finding engaging young people is not hard. I mean, I also still squeak into the 18 to 29 age bracket, but one challenge that we've faced on a few occasions is being taken seriously by members of the community, even by, I don't know, like younger female MPs, not naming names. But so I wonder if you could speak to that and talk about some solutions that you've come up with.
Sarah, it's all yours.
Oh man, I get to start.
Yeah.
So being taken seriously, and how to be taken seriously as a youth group, or
I'll just project because the microphone walked away, but yeah.
What's that? Because he can't hear the other end, so he can't hear the other end.
No, yeah, strategies for dealing with when you hit that wall, how to move forward productively.
oh, like I said, I think this is a question probably better answered by Molly and Steve, but for me, I really like the point that Steve brought up about intergenerational work. I think there's nothing like it. I think feminists in particular have really got that down. Like, I work with women that are younger than me and women that are like 70 or 80 years old. And now some of my best allies are just not my age. I think making those linkages are really important, and by doing that too, you can speak to the different age groups too, right? But as a youth group, I think this is better answered by you.
Okay. Obviously, as a young person, being taken seriously is a concern that we struggle with all the time, particularly by people in government. But one of the things I'll say is that young people gave Justin Trudeau a majority in the last election, and we're the largest incoming voting cohort in Canada right now. So we're going to make up millennials at least, are going to make up a huge number of the voters in the upcoming election. So if a politician does not want to take that power seriously, then that's a poor choice on their part, because it's actually quite significant. So I think that one of the most important things that young people can do to be taken seriously by politicians is to actually vote, and to be vocal about why they cast their votes the way that they do. And to say, I will not vote for a candidate that will not have a position on this, particularly, for example, if you're talking to a conservative member of parliament, what is your solution on this? And if you don't have one, you're not getting my vote, and you might have gotten it in the past. So that would be my advice in terms of.
Thank you, Molly. Steve?
I don't know if this advice is particularly helpful to the average age of the audience or the majority of them, but I've started as a child rights activist at the age of 16 for UNICEF, going to G8 Summit, then climate policy. Then I was at the UN for 3 years on sustainable development goals policy making. Most of the time, I'm never taken seriously. Even now, when I walk into high schools dressed like this, teachers think I'm one of the students. So not being taken seriously is an expectation. And I actually don't have an answer to overcome that. I think that's just part of human nature. And it's always been that way, that the older generation kind of always looks down on the younger generation. And I think students do that too. University students look down upon high school or elementary students, and it always goes down that way. So I think the most practical message that I've been telling myself and my friends is suck it up. There's no way around it, and just gotta keep on keeping on.
Steve, has anybody ever asked you for a hallway pass?
Twice in the last 50 years we visited.
Good stuff. Question, anyone? Yes, Sanj.
Amazing presentations, thank you. Mollie, you brought up something I was going to ask you about. That is, I agree with you that your generation brought Barack Obama and Trudeau to power in large part with social media. But as we've seen now with Myanmar and stuff like that, Facebook and social media is actually being taken, for better words, by the other side. How do you, for somebody in our age category, social media is difficult to maneuver. Do you have any comments about how social media can actually become a negative aspect of in the fight against climate change?
Oh, sure. I think that the way that social media currently exists, in the sense that it's almost entirely unregulated by government forces, and it's up to the people that own those companies to regulate what content goes on and off it. I think that is very problematic in terms of how messaging gets out there. I am hopeful that that reality changes in the near future, but that doesn't mean that I don't see social media as a force duly for good and evil. And I think maybe you can argue that it has gone to the opposite side, but I don't necessarily think that that means that we should stop messaging that way, because then we just forfeit our voice on that platform to the other side. So I think, and the reality of the matter is that most young people, I wish I had the exact figure, but the majority of young people actually get their news from social media now. So it's a very scary figure, I agree with you. But the idea that that we shouldn't be representing our views on there, I don't necessarily agree with, because I do think it's important that there's a sort of shared opportunity for voices. The other thing I'll say about young people and targeting them online, which is a little bit of a non sequitur, but I think it's important, is that when you look at the election of Donald Trump or Doug Ford or other sort of situations where people have been elected that didn't necessarily capture the youth vote and youth turnout was lower, a big part of that is young people not feeling like they understand these issues or not feeling qualified to engage with them or participate in the democratic process, because they don't feel that they know enough about these things. And that's why I think that actually education is one of the most important ways to affect change amongst young people, because young people used to see it as their duty to vote. But this generation feels more reticent about voting because they're more concerned that they don't have a right to participate in the process because they don't know enough about these issues. So I would argue that getting to them on that ground level where they are getting their news and where they are interacting with each other on social media is a really great way to motivate young people to get more involved in issues that they care about.
Steve, you want to say something about that?
I really agree with a lot, almost everything that Mollie was saying. It's very important that we're engaging young people on social media. Also, if we see kind of the non-democratic values that's sweeping across the world and the election of these demagogues, it's not necessarily that young people were confused through social media posts or conspiracy theories that resulted in their election. Young people are actually not, young people have hard time even reaching that content because their friends don't generally share that kind of content proportionately, and they are not convinced by those posts because we were born into age of crazy stuff on the media, on the internet, whether it's directly about us as cyberbullying or friends making crap up and then putting it on Facebook group for our grade or something. So we're very adept at dealing with this kind of conspiracy theories, but I think our parents and grandparents take everything on the net quite seriously. And when they see kind of memes that talk about US politics or something, then I think their predisposition is to think about it, whereas our predisposition is to think, oh, it's another crap. And then kind of go from there. So there's that. But the second part is dealing with garbage on the internet is actually by posting more good things. And I think that's how we will be able to drown out the crazy voices. So yeah, I know that some of the people in the room have been posting on Twitter and different platforms quite well, and Mollie's organization recently started doing Twitter. I just learned it today, and their posts are absolutely phenomenal. So yeah, and so quality content and high quantity of content would be able to drown out some of the lies and garbage that's out on the internet.
Sarah, do you want to add to it?
I mean, I maybe just a little bit. I think like reopening the discussion about free press, free democratic press, like, you know, I think increasing civic engagement and like remembering too, like what the importance of independent journalism was. I think like these are things that we as youth, I think we can start thinking about again, because I do think social media does present a lot of dangers that previous generations weren't. You know, before nobody would just get a message. Now we have so many messages that it's like noise. So I think that's a challenge that we have.
Maybe we should challenge the youth to start a movement called Youth for Truth.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rolly. I'm with the CCL, one of the chapters in Ottawa. And I'm truly inspired by seeing the three younger panelists and what the issues that you're talking about. I remember having a conversation, or it might have been through Facebook, with Steve last year or the year before when he first started the 3% project. He's nodding. And it's mushroomed, so kudos to you. And as a baby boomer, I always feel like I have to apologize for the 7.5 million boomers in Canada and the 85 million boomers in North America for having passed on this problem to your generations. And when I first got into this, it was out of guilt. So it's truly inspiring that you want to work with us still, because and that we can work together. So I don't have a question. I just wanted to pass that on. It's really, really inspirational. You've taken this huge weight off my shoulders. Thank you.
This message is for Sarah. I work for an organization. Part of the work that they do is work with women who have been impacted by war, and how they have become peace builders in their communities, like doing the delicate work of forging peace. And you mentioned in your talk about the impacts of climate change on women, and it's good to see that the UN is also starting to take this seriously and creating awareness around it. But I'm wondering, to your knowledge, are there examples of women who are in vulnerable communities, whether they're in Canada or abroad, that are working on the ground to take action on climate change?
Yeah, from my knowledge, there are, especially among in resiliency work, I think, so climate change adaptation. So these are groups that I think for example, there's a women's group in Louisiana that does that sort of work. So, you know, dealing with community members that have lost homes or whose homes are underwater, or, you know, and often too, like the disenfranchised live in the unlivable areas of cities, and you have all of the, you know, really like luxury condos like that are still actually on the very fragile parts of coastal towns. But you'll find that all the areas that are polluted or suffering from drought or from floods are all in the poor areas. And I do think it is women's groups that are doing a lot of the work. I think it's the other thing too with the UN. It's tough, right? Because on one hand, the UN has these stats that really speak to what we need to do. On the other hand, though, I mean, you know, the UN peacekeepers there have been questions about their conduct in war-torn countries and in countries facing political conflict. So I think the danger is everywhere for women. And I do think that the answer is to really support the women's organizations and their work in those countries, and to bring more women into leadership around climate change. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Tom.
Some of our difficulty in terms of engaging, or at least I have personally, I say, engaging some younger people in terms of showing up to do a face-to-face meeting with a politician is it takes time that maybe watching 90 seconds of Stephen Colbert or something on Facebook, you have to get to the meeting, you have to prep for the meeting. So it's asking for a couple of hours out of your day, not 90 seconds. Are there ways to make it more feasible? Because it's so powerful to have a range of age groups in a face-to-face meeting, because it just demonstrates the breadth of the concern that their constituents have for the issue. So is there any tips for making it attractive and more feasible for young people?
Let's start with Steve. It's yours, Steve.
Sorry, I didn't quite understand the question. Is it how to engage young people more, or how to lower the barriers for civic engagement of young people, particularly in meeting MPs?
Essentially, yes, and particularly it's the difference in time commitment. Like you can engage on social media, like sign a petition or watch a 90-second clip between classes or whatever, but taking 2 hours out to go to a face-to-face meeting and be prepared for it and so on is much more difficult.
Right. Two things. One is capacity building, and two is just realistic circumstances. On capacity building, because young people, again, haven't been around for a while, and because we don't focus on civic education, the general way that in 21st century how citizens or middle class learns how democracy functions is just through life. Throughout time, you read stuff, you hear about stuff, you talk to people, and you generally gather a sense of how our country works. And without civic education, that's going to take a very long time, which is why young people generally don't vote or participate in the civic process, because we just don't know, and no one's taught it to us really. So that's why that capacity building piece is very important, and it's going to take a lot of time and money and resources to do that because we really don't know. So that's the first part, the importance of capacity building. Second one, when we work with high school students, we encourage students to meet with their city councilors, MPP or MLAs or MPs. And the first barrier is we can't get there during school time, and after school, the work hours are over. And unless our parents are available by just being at home to give us a ride, we can't really get there. So if the school or the teachers were able to excuse the students during the day to go meet with the MP, or if the MP were to visit the school, these are some of the very practical ways. So if any of you are a teacher or used to be teachers, it would be very helpful to encourage other teachers to work with the school administration to take the students to the MP offices or elected officials' offices to have those meetings and provide the capacity building, whether in extracurricular setting or within course time.
Mollie.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with a lot of what Steve said. I think I would also reiterate the role of mentorship in that kind of snowflake model of activism that you guys are working with. I think to emphasize Steve's point, a lot of young people feel unqualified to do those things, and they're also really busy. So like if they're, I mean, not that we're all not busy, but it's like if you're in university, your workload might seem really daunting, and to add taking 2 hours out of your day to meet with a counselor on that might seem a little bit more intimidating or scary or more work than it's worth. So thinking about like galvanizing people, I think you can kind of ramp up what you ask people to do. And when you have a group of say 10 young people with you, you can kind of gauge of those 10 people who might be able to dedicate a little bit more or willing to dedicate a little bit more of their time. And then maybe they become the nexus of your focus in terms of who you're taking with you to meetings and that kind of thing. If that is helpful, I hope it is.
Thank you. Sarah, do you want to add to that?
Sure. Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I think, your point in your talk about youth and younger adults having more precarious income situations. I think that's one of the problems that we're facing. That's definitely a problem that we're facing in terms of feminist organizing. I can say that, but I also think, though, that part of being in this generation is that we're used to instant gratification, and I think that's our problem. I think we have to know what it takes to actually, build a relationship with a politician, to get them on side, to get them to know what the policy is, to get their party on side. Like that all takes time. Even organizing events around those sorts of things and all the staging that has to happen before that. These are all things that they're just going to take a lot of time. And I think the youth folk, we just have to know that, and we have to accept it, and we have to take it on.
Thank you. Last question.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to find out what you think the potential is for more stronger action. So I want to give an example of Greta Thunberg from Sweden, who's on a school strike. And I believe there's actually one person here who's willing to join, who's planning to join school strike, walk out, like possibly be once a week on Fridays until there's effective climate action in the country. Like, gotta grab the attention of the authorities that youth are not going to stand for this, and, so not to ask permission from the school, but just to say, we're doing it, send a message that they can't miss.
Reminds me of all this. Mollie.
I'm not, sorry, is the question?
Potential for stronger action, like why sit in the classroom when your world is being why sit in the classroom when your world is being destroyed? You don't have a future. Why are you in school? You're not going to have a job. What's going to be happening in 2040? How old are you going to be then? What's the message, and how can that be more strongly put? And youth are in the position to do that. I have to say, whenever I've been with youth coming and speaking in delegations, they sit up and listen, because it's your future as young people that is at stake. But it needs to be in the media, and this is one way to get it there.
Mollie, want to try this one? Actually, why don't we give to Steve, because he's smiling. Steve, you want to tackle this one? A big smile on your face during that question.
Yeah, no, so there's generally a sense that in the youth engagement or youth policy work, we always say that youth are the garbage can, meaning any issue that's too daunting for the previous generations or that they couldn't figure out, they're like, oh, the next generation, they'll do it. They're energetic. They want to do everything. They'll figure it out. Well, I mean, if you guys couldn't do it, then it's going to be just as hard or harder for us at this age and with our experience. So, yeah, that was kind of what was also going through my mind. Like, education for us is also important, and the notion that like, what's the point of all this if the climate is going to go down the drain? I don't even know if I can get out of bed tomorrow. If that's really what I was thinking. So hopefully that's not the message that we would be sending to young people. It kind of around why is there no media coverage around young people? I asked that myself as well. I think it makes a very good show when young people are in supporting roles of adults. Then media usually likes to cover that, kind of as a young people as a kind of chorus to one adult or an organization that's doing it. So maybe that's just the societal perception of where young people's place is in adults' mind. I'm not sure, but yeah, if you a good way to rectify that would be if you have connections to the media and you can connect your local students, whether university or high school or organizations that are working on these things, that would go a long way.
Thank you. We'll try again, Mollie?
Sure, yeah, thank you. I think I would say that there are obviously many different forms of activism. I won't sit here and promote or invalidate any of them. I'll just say that I put a price on it. I think our main goal is to educate and galvanize youth to talk to people and try and generate a more collaborative conversation with the political class about what they could be doing to reconcile this issue. So we're not really encouraging students to stage walkouts or anything at this stage in our situation.
Okay, thank you. So.
Thanks. The tradition for feminists has always been to check out the person with the most power and stick it on them. So, you know, gas companies, the oil companies, Nestle, like I think these people and like looking at where their finances are and attacking their pocketbooks. And I think that's the most powerful thing. But I mean, there are a lot of ways to go about this. And I think we have to do it in all the ways. It has to be multifaceted.
Thank you very much. I was just handing a piece of paper here with two things. You said we need to. Let me put my glasses on. Just the problem with. So I'm over 30 by a couple of years.
Wait, sorry.
Actually, they said to ask you to tell your peers to like CCL Canada Facebook page, number one, and for them to replace the current climate denier politicians. So you can help us with that, which would be great. But just a comment, I want to thank all three of you. You know, I do a lot of these conferences, and when we have a youth panel, I say, yeah, okay, yeah, right, yeah. You know, I've never been blown away by three people more than I have been by the three of you.
Yeah, c'est ça. Tu vois, tout le monde dit que c'est marquant, c'était les jeunes, ça, qui parlaient de même. C'est amazing.
The depth of knowledge, the way you speak, and the way you present, thank you very,
Il va
very
pas
much.
avoir plus que 22, 24 ans.
Yeah, go ahead.
C'est ça.
Just to present
Il
the gift.
16 ans, il travaillait au UN, UN committees. My
What is that?
What's us to shame? Les deux filles
Thank you
parlent.
very much, Sarah. This is for you, a little memento from all of us.
Wayne,
Thank you,
yours is in the
Mollie.
mail. I'm Steve, yours is in the mail.
Steve, hashtag love forever.
Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Don't,
Coffee break, and then we come right back in, okay? Coffee's out.
all three of you never give up.
Vient du nord de la Colombie-Britannique, Steve, and he's in the airport in Ottawa doing this conference. That blows me away. Ça va le voir, il a l'air
Test. If you can start taking your seats, we'll begin in about a minute. Please take your seats.
Hey,
Can we please take our seats, please? Room.
check.
That's why I turn it off every time, so just as sick as it is. Okay. Can we have everyone in the room, please? So our next panelist. So our next panelist is Bruce Hyer. Bruce, I'm not going to introduce you because we're going to do that when we sit down, right? We're going to chat a bit. Okay. So Bruce is a big supporter of ours. We'll tell you a bit more about him in a few minutes. But Bruce, it's all yours.
Oh, 2 weeks ago, I was out in BC knocking on doors for PR. And I was bragging to somebody about, I haven't had a cold for a decade. I shouldn't have said that. I feel all right, but I hope my voice gets through this. So let's roll. First of all, I've been coming for several years, and thank you, Cathy and Gerry, for reinviting me again and again. I'd like to start with this. Next. I have three priorities when it comes to politics. The first is democratic reform. I hope we talk about this some more later. I won't belabor it now, but the root cause of what's happening in the US and England and Canada and India. Anybody know the fifth country that has first past the post? It's that bastion of democracy, Zimbabwe. We're in great company. Next. Then my other two are poverty, gaps in income. I'm an odd duck. I'm sure if you've heard me before, you figured that out. But I'm a lefty, greeny capitalist. So I have this little knack for making money, and I like doing entrepreneurial things, and then I give it away. But unfortunately, most of our capitalists don't seem to see it that way. And we all know why we're here today. Next. Next. So I heard a couple of you ask one of the other speakers, why do politicians just toe the line, and why don't they have backbones, and why do they lie to you and tell you what you want to hear? And next. Well, sorry about this. You may have already figured this out, but when I moved to Canada 43 years ago, I thought I was moving to a democracy. And it turned out not to be true. Now, parties are not mentioned in the Canadian Constitution anywhere. All it says is every district will have a representative, and they will go to Parlement, the talking place, and speak for you, speak for their constituents. But it's not working out that way. Sir John A. Macdonald said his biggest political obstacle was keeping his caucus together. because he didn't have a lot of leverage over him. He called them loose fish. In 1970, Pierre Trudeau the Elder, changed the Elections Act. And what was noticed and publicized and debated was he put party names on the ballot. I personally think that was a bad idea. But far worse was in the fine print, it said you can't run for a national party unless the national party signs your nomination papers. And almost immediately, he had his MPs under his thumb and sometimes under his heel. And any of you remember the famous quote that he said a couple months later? He called his own MPs mere trained seals. Isn't that lovely? Mere trained seals. But unfortunately, that's what many of them are. Now, a little story, I won't make it too long, but when I decided to leave my party because they were trying to control my voting, my thinking, my speaking, and wanted me to toe the party line, so I went independent. And another MP took me out to dinner and bought me a nice dinner. And he said, Bruce, I don't have your backbone. I admire what you did, but I like my job. I like the paycheck. I like the illusion of power. I really kind of like it. So I'm not doing what you did. And then he said the saddest thing I ever heard on the Hill. He said, I've just accepted the fact that all I really am is a customer sales rep for the party in my riding. Next. So yes, many of you were here yesterday. I mentioned this. We have 3 brains. Our forebrain is strategic and logical. And most of you operate in that sphere. And that's the good news, but it's also a bit of a problem because I think you assume that everybody operates in their forebrain. Next. That's where voters operate. And so if you want to get support from voters or the mass public, you can't just appeal to their logic. You have to appeal to their emotions as well. Next. And this is where politicians operate. Sorry, but it's the way it is. It's about sex, and have you noticed? And territory and power and control. And Stephen Harper didn't operate in his emotional brain at all. He was very strategic, but he could strike faster than a snake. And that's what many politicians do. So when you go out and lobby people, keep in mind that you have to appeal, hopefully, to all 3 levels if you want to be especially effective. So what's the answer? Yes. Except I don't call it carbon fee and dividend. I call it carbon dividend. Accentuate the benefit. Pardon me? All right. Carbon money in your pocket, whatever you want to call it. Back up, please. Forward, please. Y'all know the little cartoon, right? Amazingly, it's not on your website. At least I couldn't find it. I searched and searched. Well, I couldn't find it, Cathy. Sorry, it's certainly not up front. But be sure you bring it with you. Be sure you give it to each MP. Some MPs are bright, some not so bright. But this really makes it very clear. And they're busy people. And if I were going to lobby, I would seriously consider handing them that and then go through the little bullet points. Next. Now, I know that many of you, most of you, and especially Cathy, want to emphasize and re-emphasize and re-emphasize nonpartisan. Well, if you want to be nonpartisan, why do you invite Bruce Hyer? But anyway, so I think it's time, overdue, for you to say, if any party or any politician supports you, support them, praise them, mention it, talk about it. Next. And here's where, I'm splitting up the parties. I enjoyed Vince yesterday. That was fun. I learned a lot. But I don't, as you may have already noticed, entirely agree with Vince that we sometimes have to be a little critical and a little specific, because which part of the brain do politicians operate in? The reptilian brain, fear. Next. Now, hopefully you all got one. If you didn't get one, I asked somebody to hand out, they all get handed out. I'm hoping you'll take these with you when you go to do your lobbying, and don't show it to the MP. But kind of a different approach for each party. They've got different goals, different values, and different arguments will appeal to them. And maybe you can improve or enhance what I handed to you. But I thought about it a lot, and those were what I thought were the basics. So let's just skip over these. Well, let's go back to the liberal one. As you heard Mark say earlier today, the liberals have painted themselves into a corner. They've painted themselves into your corner. And there's only one way out. So we always knew that, but they're finally figuring it out. Next. Now, I can't for the life of me, again, as Mark said, he stole all my lines, understand why the conservatives haven't been on side from the beginning. No money to government, it's not a tax. By the way, never let a journalist or anybody you're talking to get away with it when they talk about it's a tax. It's not a percentage of money. No money goes to government, at least in our minds. It's not a tax. I talked to Patrick Brown back before he got fired, and I hope I influenced him. But I said, Patrick, you have a problem. An awful lot of the public that don't want to vote Liberal this time think you don't care about poor people and you don't care about the environment. So go for carbon fee and dividend, and you'll have hard evidence right away that you care about both. Next. So I would say give me hugs, but not with this cold. You don't want it. Next. Now, Vince won't like this one. I'm going to brag for a minute. Sorry about this. It's not about my ego, not too much anyway. But I introduced more bills and motions to the House of Commons than all the previous members of my riding all time, 23. And 4 of them passed. One of them was a climate change bill, Bill C-311. One created a national marine conservation area, the biggest in the world. And there were a couple of unlocked cell phones. I unlocked your cell phones. I bet you didn't know that. Remember when you used to have to write out your plan till forever? But how did I do that? Well, when I negotiate, and my line on this is you don't get what you deserve in life, you get what you negotiate. So I'm a one-man bad cop, good cop guy. And to be honest, I often start out good cop, smile, say hello, be a little friendly, ask about their kids. And then if they've got a soft spot, I attack it. And then I do a little repair afterward and end up with a handshake or maybe even a hug. But I know a couple of you that have these skills, but develop Vince's skills. I'll give you some more today, but also make sure that you have a couple of bad cop skills in your toolkit. Now, it's a horrible thing to say, but CCLers are nice. Sometimes I think you may be a little too nice. Are we done? Well, the last one's a medical thing. So in medicine, if you get to the plane crash and you're a doctor all by yourself and there's 100 people on the plane and some are gonna die and it's hopeless and some are got a hangnail, you work on the ones that you can make a difference. So please don't waste your energy fighting with people who are climate change deniers. It's hopeless. Next. Thank you. And that's my email address. And if you want to, if you're too nice to do it publicly and you want to yell at me later, you can send me an email.
Bruce, what you should do is if you want people to follow you, say, if you want to follow me, this is what it looked like from behind.
we sitting here?
Yeah, we're sitting here. I'll give you the spotlight. How's that? So we had a little chat, Bruce, because I don't know a heck of a lot about you. I found out a lot more about you today and yesterday when we chatted. But what makes you so strong, number one?
Oh, my goodness.
Microphone.
Well, Jerry's right. I am psychologically strong. At least I think I am. I'll give you a serious answer. And is this being live streamed? No, I'll just skip that point. But I will say, no, it's fine. No, it's fine. Leave it. I'm not afraid of anything in the world. Absolutely nothing, with one exception. Can you guess what the exception is?
I can.
My wife. Yep.
Mess with her, you mess with her gang, right? So you talk about we're too nice, and we need to have some bad cops. Doesn't necessarily have to be a bad cop. It can be a smart cop.
Well, maybe a smart cop is a combination of both. But I'll tell you a quick election story. Last election that I lost, I knocked at a door, and an older gentleman, crotchety older gentleman, answered the door. And as some people do, he said, "I don't vote." And, well, you really should vote. "No, you're all a bunch of liars and crooks and cheats and bandits and evil." And he went on for a while. And so I don't do this often, but I did it. Sorry about this, Vince. You won't like it. I said, "Sir, I know your name, I know your face, I know where you live. And when I get reelected," I'm an eternal optimist, "don't ever come to me for help, ever. Never. Do not come to me for help." He goes, "Oh." And I said, "If you do come to me for help, either have voted or lie to me and say that you did."
My favorite line when I'd knock at the door, they'd say, "I've always voted ABC party." I'd say, "Thank you for not making a difference." And they'd say, "What? Yeah, you haven't made a difference because it's people who change their minds who make a difference. Otherwise, the parties wouldn't change." So we'd get some long conversation. And probably like you ended up with a sign on the lawn anyways.
Well, I have one more. Yes, I love getting lawn signs. It's fun. I love taking somebody from, "I'm not voting for your party for the rest of my life. You're a bunch of flaky, wacko tree huggers." And 7 minutes later, they're saying, "Yeah, put a sign on the lawn." That's fun stuff. That's fun.
And we don't need to be.
But I want to just add to that.
You're allowed.
I think people, my point about, I didn't tell you the punchline to the older gentleman. Sorry, this is the point. I'm a little jet lagged, as I told you. I ran into him after the election, and I had lost, and he came up to me in the mall. And in a very respectful voice, he said, "Mr. Hyer, I want to apologize to you for my behavior at the door. And I just want you to let you know that I voted, and I even voted for you." So I think people respect respectful strength. You don't have to be obnoxious. I was a little over the top with that, man. But I think that many people either are stuck in a position or they feel the need to play devil's advocate for that position. But if you stick to your guns and just say, "Listen, I've been studying this as Penny and Maury and Cathy have for decades," they respect that, makes them think. And they may not agree with you right then, but they go away and they do think about it.
People tend to appreciate honesty. And when we're with the politicians, and I remember somebody that was not happy with me the last time we did lobbying, because the question I asked was that, "What's wrong with you as a conservative?" I said, "This is a conservative policy. It's revenue neutral. The money's going back to the people. What's wrong with you?" And it wasn't a nasty question. It was just, I want to know what was wrong with them. So, you need to ask the tough questions and just wait for an answer. Because politicians are used to answering tough questions, really.
I love question period. I loved asking the questions, but I was always hopeful. Jack Layton and I had a deal. I'd help him be prime minister and I'd be minister of the environment. And we'd have if that had happened, we'd have your policy right now. We really would. But I like answering hard questions. But here's a respect thing. most people don't get answers in the House of Commons. As you know, it's a pretty toxic environment. But usually what I did is I printed out an extra copy of my question and I handed it to the minister before question period. And so I didn't blindside them. It may have been a hard question. And interestingly, quite often I got real answers.
Well, of course, if you're going to be blindsided, you're going to go and just spew off some stuff that makes absolutely no sense and what you're supposed to, and you're going to toe the party line. Whereas if you have to do research, you're going to get a real answer. So yeah, don't blindside politicians, which is not what we do anyways at Citizens Climate Lobby. But we do need to ask them the question: what is holding people back? If I was someone come up to you and say, Bruce, why do we need a carbon tax? What's a carbon tax going to do?
I would have a very similar answer to, I think, what most of you would have. So it wouldn't be real short, but it would be passionate. And I guess that's a good segue into saying, as you go forth and try to influence MPs, realize, here's the bad news, and there may be a bit of good news. The bad news is you're not speaking to an individual. You're speaking to a party, unfortunately. And that's why I handed out the little cheat sheet that you might consider with some bullets, bullet points that you can reiterate that might appeal to that party. And they may not acknowledge them right there, but they may take that little cheat sheet into their pocket and take it to the next caucus meeting and influence from the bottom up. So anyway, I'll leave it there.
It's good. No, it's a good answer because we get asked the question already. Why do you need? What's it going to do? What's it going to do? And a lot of people don't get that. Now, you talked about the cartoon. I want to talk about our cartoon because I think that's very powerful as well, and I've used it quite a bit. Why do you think it's so powerful?
Because even I can understand it.
That makes two of us.
No, it's simple. It's clear. It's straightforward. It's one little bite at a time. Those of you who know me well know that I have attention deficit disorder. I can't digest the whole concept, holus bolus. I have to break it up into little bits, one piece at a time, digest it and tuck it away into a synapse somewhere and then take on the next one. And I think a lot of politicians are like me. A lot of politicians have attention deficit disorder. Realize that. If you're a school teacher, treat them as if they have ADD because they oftentimes do. Do you know the 4 fuels that Parliament runs on? Caffeine, booze, testosterone, and ego.
That's another one. Ego. I like that. You gotta remember that. That's good. That's good. I'm going to take a complete curve here. I want to ask you, we had 3 very impressive young people speak a few minutes ago. I don't know if you were as blown away by them as I was, but with your experience, having been a politician, having been in the House of Commons, what are some of the advice you would give to them or some of the suggestions you might have for them in dealing with politicians as well? I'm coming at this from the youth perspective, of course.
Well, it's their future. I'm 72, reasonably healthy. Maybe I have a decade or 2 left, but they have their whole life ahead of them. And we all know the biosphere and civilization as we know it are in trouble. And I think also kids are a little different today. Their economic prospects are so poor that many of them are not as tied to the Madison Avenue messages and jobs of the past.
Yep.
So they have to consider alternatives. They either have to be hippies or couch surfers, or they have to get involved.
And I kind of agree with you. And actually, because I was thinking about this last night, I was reading 6 amazing things before breakfast. And one of the things that really dawned on me is that, where are jobs going? What jobs are going to be there? And if we stick to the same jobs we have now, those are becoming like mining. In Subra, we used to employ 21,000 people at Inco. We employ like 1,900 now, yet the production is higher than it's ever been. So machines are taken over from human beings, and a lot of the jobs in those sectors are going to be taken over. So I view this, putting a fee on carbon as a way to basically move innovation and increase innovation and create new types of jobs for youth. I think that's one of the things that youth should be focusing on, is that we want the jobs we want, not the jobs that you want to give us. Yeah. So what's your next step as a politician?
I have a couple of really difficult decisions coming up. So I have 4,000 lawn signs, 4,000. And I hate lawn signs. I do. So do I really want them to go into the dump or drive 500 miles to recycle them? Or should I just do it and run one more time?
Recycling at its best.
and then I have 8 ecotourism lodges.
Wow.
In one of the world's largest parks, Wabakimi Park. And I'm kind of enjoying it. So getting fired from my last job wasn't all that horrible, given that I went back to flying float planes and guiding canoe trips and fishing trips and having less stress. But here's an idea. Is anybody here from BC? All right, well, here's my idea. You might want to help. I need crew. So I was out in BC working on proportional representation, but I stopped in at Campbell River and looked at a 76-foot ketch. It has 4 staterooms and a huge deck. Now, 50 years ago when I was young, I played the saxophone on Pete Seeger's boat, the Clearwater, sailing up and down the Hudson River, helping to clean it up and pass the Clean Water Act in the US. So he had the idea. So my idea is I'm toying seriously about buying this ketch and forming a nonprofit, Save Our Salmon, naming the boat the Salmon Warrior or the Salmon Protector or something, sailing from port to port, putting a whole bunch of great musicians on it, and raising money and consciousness to save wild salmon. So there's a little project.
I like that project. Need some help?
Sure.
Okay, we'll do this again.
Now, who wants to buy my 8 fishing and ecotourism lodges so that I can go do that?
Bruce, we're out of time, unfortunately. I want to thank you very, very much. I'm sorry, Deb. You know, it's just, I want to thank you very much. So Cathy has got something. Go ahead, Cathy.
Bruce, you asked a question. If we're nonpartisan, why do we keep inviting you back? Because at Citizens Climate Lobby, we stand behind the politicians who stand up for the climate.
And also, we need to recognize that our local MP in Sudbury, Mark Serret, has also endorsed fee and dividend publicly as well, which is kind of nice. So, which is good. We're getting there, one person at a time.
And how many here were part of the Bill C-311 championing in 2010? You are the source of why I know Cheryl, why I know Lynn. I didn't know you then, Mari, and a couple other people. You are actually a pre-CCL. You helped CCL exist. So that's another reason.
I have to tell one that more than a fact, I would do dubious honor. Bill 311, the climate change bill, when Stephen Harper killed it in the Senate, one of the worst, killed everybody. One of the worst days of my life. But anyway, it is the only bill in the history of Canada passed in the sort of democratically elected House and killed in the Senate with no debate. 5 bills have ever been killed in the Senate that were passed in the House. The other 4 were debated. Bill 311, 1 hour, raw politics, kill it. Yes, sir. Done. Pretty sad day.
Wow.
Thank you very much, Bruce. That was good. Guess what? The short strokes. So we're moving to motivational interviewing revisited with Vince. Vince, you're on.
I'm on.
You're on.
So I wasn't going to prepare anything PowerPoint-wise, but there was just so much happening that I needed the aid of some visual aids. So there's not going to be a ton of stuff there. It's going to be more on the mic, but I need this. I did join the Zoom. Is it possible for us to have me screen share or something?
What do we? Is it your PowerPoint or?
Yeah, just a desktop though. There's going to be other things. So.
Great. So now whatever you have on there. We'll see. Okay, cool, thanks. No problem.
Okay, so yesterday we had a pretty big conversation about things, and if I am like looking crazy with my eyes or something, it's because like, whoa, with the light. Yeah, oh, thank you for that. So yesterday we were talking a lot about motivational interviewing, and today we were going to look at two different things, and I'm doing sort of a job here, which is this first time I've ever really done it, called a rapporteur. The word is new to me. And so I'm supposed to be looking at the conference and saying, what am I seeing here? And I'm seeing so much that it was kind of a little overwhelming. So basically in the half an hour that we have together right now, I'm going to go through a little story. I'm going to talk about some of the things that I did see. And then we'll maybe kind of go through a little mini activity at the end. So that's what I have planned for this half an hour. So yes, where's my slide here? I'll go to this first one. Okay, so this is, I just want to talk about some of the different things that we saw here. So thank you, Bruce, for that. I really love the counter perspectives. I think it's really variable, and I really appreciated that, actually. So, I just wanted to put this up there and say, like, why do we have to call it, carbon dividend? I mean, we can call it whatever we want. So I just want to say, what do you guys think about Ludo's constituents? It kind of has the same letters there. So I don't know, like, if I'm okay with it, but I mean, whatever. I'm not HCDL. I'm just here to, oorah for you guys. So so that's my first reflection. One reflection that I saw actually was what lentils, yes. So what a great food, right? So we had a surgeon who came up here and was talking about visualizations and how can we actually visualize the impact of something. And they're like, okay, well, if we use this gas or we use that gas, then one of them has like up, down, and up halfway, somewhere in the middle. So like, I remember that, and it seemed like everybody, that was the moment, like, I tried to say, what's the biggest moment from each of these talks? And I think that was like, how we can visualize the impact. So the lentil is a very, very special thing. Whenever you see a lentil, the weight of the lentil is about the weight that it has in CO2 emissions. So that's actually something really special. So if somebody says like a ton of carbon, well, what does that even mean? So you could be like, well, it's like a ton of lentils. That's like enough lentils to feed like an army of children or something like that. So if you need to have a picture, then you can actually just do what I did when this is actually going early on part of my story. You can go and you can buy a bag of lentils and say like this right here, this is a kilogram. This is what a kilogram of CO2 is like. So if you want to see the other impacts of it, then you can go to this slide. And you can say, if I were to get a kilogram of lamb, then, well, a kilogram of lentils would be like, a kilogram of lamb would equal 39 kilograms of lentils. So I need 39 of these bags. So basically enough like lentils to feed me for a year. Let's see here, what's next? What else did I hear? So Kate talked about health arguments and how we can do health framing. So what I wanted to bring up here is this is actually content that comes from workshops that Environmentum has done in classrooms, my organization. So we actually use a worksheet that looks like this. And we'll ask young people to rank their values, which of their values are like most important to them. And then they'll say, which of these climate concerns are most important to you? And we'll ask them to draw lines between the two and say, how are your values connected to climate concerns? So I know that you can't really read that. I realize it's too small, but really it's just a form with a big long list of values and then some climate impacts. And then they draw lines. So that's basically it. But the results of it are on this slide, which is, this is the likelihood that that value is going to be connected to a climate concern. So if we're looking for the biggest impact, this table actually goes down further, but all of the values down there are like very, very small in their connectivity. So really health is the biggest one that we would want to connect to. Then at some point, and I think a lot of the young people were really talking about like perception of people. And it really actually made me think about this slide. Have you guys heard of the 6 Americans? Yeah. Okay, so for a long time in environmental, we were actually wanting to use this thing called the normative feedback intervention, which we weren't able to do because the data was always pointed in the wrong direction. Whenever we do social proof data, people trend towards what the average person does. But what's interesting is if you can present data around a specific norm where people actually are more, like morally aligned in the direction that we want to go, and you present that data to them, then they can correct the falsely perceived norm with major benefits. So this is actually, we actually started collecting this data in schools. This is like data for more than 200 people, 200 young people. And this is also represented when we collect it with adults as well. Specifically, we asked the question, and this once again on the other one, which I'll show you very quickly. So you asked the question, circle 1, how concerned are you about climate change? And you circle very concerned, cautious, so on and so forth, like the 6 Americas. And on the other side, you see how concerned are your peers? And what's interesting is that consistently the results are always the same. They're always the same, which is people think that I'm more concerned than other people are. And that is, it follows through with adults, it follows through with everybody. Everybody feels the exact same way, which is I'm more moral than other people. So when we correct this, then we actually counter something called pluralistic ignorance. If you want the article, I can send it to you. It's by Geiger and Swim, and their psychologists say they studied how to actually prevent self-silencing on climate issues, and actually just correcting this falsely perceived norm can actually counter self-silencing and make it so people can actually talk about climate change. So I wanted to share that. Now, one thing that I wanted to talk about, because there's been a lot of sort of like emotional ups and downs as we've been here today. That's just what I've experienced. And I think one of the moments was actually when you shared your story. And that also sometimes with a musician. It really kind of took us on an emotional journey. And when I was coming here, I tried to actually take a video from my phone and put it up, but I'm, technically incapable. So, but I saw a monarch butterfly as I was going to grab that bag of lentils from a Sobeys around the corner. And it was just kind of like fluttering, and it was still alive, but it looked like it wasn't doing too well, and it was just so beautiful. And it reminded me of your starfish. I'm sorry I can't share the video right now. And it got me thinking about what we're doing here. And then it also brings me back to the question of why was I out going to buy a bag of lentils anyway? And, so why was I going to buy a bag of lentils instead of sitting here watching one of the presentations? And the answer was I found myself sort of a little overcome with the knowledge in the room, the expertise of the people who are here. And I thought to myself, how can I possibly give anything to these people who are so knowledgeable? And how can I do that in a half an hour when I'm not really sure? So I said, I need to just walk. I need to figure this out. And so then what I did is I came up with this. Yesterday we were talking about empathy, and we talked about there's 2 types of empathy. There's detached empathy and there's attached empathy. So the detached empathy is usually what you get when somebody is using motivational interviewing, where they're going to empathize with you, they're going to understand where you are without internalizing the feeling in themselves. And attached empathy would be an empathy so strong that not only do I understand what you're feeling, but I internalize and I feel it too. So when I came here yesterday and we did the motivational interviewing, I said that in motivational interviewing, we really need to use like a detached empathy. Now, what's interesting is I've been using motivational interviewing for 5 years now to do environmental sort of thing. And I was able to sort of find it in myself somehow to be able to get detached enough to be able to use motivational interviewing to be able to do this. But what was interesting is I realized on this walk that I actually had found myself attached that everybody else in the room would use motivational interviewing to try to get other people to do yada, yada, yada. And I realized, wow, I'm attached. So ultimately, I am in just as compromised a situation as, like, let's say somebody like Bruce might be, who is like, well, I'm not sure, like, if this is really the full solution for me. And the thing is as an expert in motivational interviewing, I can't really, like, tell you. And I was like, I think we're in actually a position where really the decision does need to be up to you to figure out how can we integrate this. So can you do motivational interviewing in the presence of attached empathy? There is one idea that I came up with, and then we can like maybe do a little mini activity. The idea was doing an honest reflection of where you are yourself, and just presenting that, but presenting it not as a confrontation or not as a persuasion, but just as a personal reflection of where you are and saying, this is where I am. And then just saying, you know, what do you think about that? So that way it gives you something to do. So you can be human, be yourself, and you can feel the way that you actually feel about it without having to like necessarily detach from it if you're not like able to really resolve that. So that's one idea that I just kind of wanted to share, which is just basically giving that personal reflection of where you are. So what I thought would be cool for doing an activity was there's 2 activity ideas, and I really want to just do the one that you think is most beneficial. Idea 1 is for me to play the rate EMP again, but instead to have everybody in the room sort of like by acclamation and or consensus or whatever, decide what sort of question you're going to ask me. And then I, as I'm Lisa Rake, will respond. And so then the entire room can be sort of doing a motivational interview on me and give you a chance to kind of experiment and say, well, we're going to do this one. And you can even throw some curveballs at me and be like, we're going to confront him, see what he does, like whatever you want. And then I'll just respond the way that I would expect somebody to respond in a motivational interviewing kind of situation. I won't respond with reptilian brain because I don't know how to do that because I don't have one. I probably do, but I don't know what that is. I think maybe Bruce could role play that, but I don't think I have the ability to. Oh, that came off differently. Oh, crap. Sorry, that's not what I meant. Oh, crap. Oh, boy. You have the experience, right? Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to leave it. Okay. So, and then the other option is I can do a motivational interview on one volunteer to see what would it be like to do motivational interviewing in your session, and then we can just kind of like observe as I conduct a motivational interview on using or not using motivational interviewing. So which one of those 2 things kind of appeals to you?
Second
one. Okay. So second one, so using motivational interviewing about motivational interviewing. Okay. Is there a volunteer who'd like to be motivational interviewed? I ask you to bring your vulnerability and your authenticity in front of an audience. So I realize that's a lot, but I'll do the motivational interviewing. I promise to be gentle. Okay. Please come up to my office. Hello. Hi. So yeah, here we are. We're doing a motivational interview. So have you like decided on like what session you're going to be like doing?
Maybe I don't understand the question.
Okay. So like, well, my understanding is there is like, I guess like assigned sort of lobby sessions on like Monday and Tuesday. Like you have all your like assignments and your plans and stuff.
Oh yes, I'm going to be attending one lobby session with an MP from the Ottawa area and one with an MP from Scarborough, both Liberals.
Okay, so Ottawa, Scarborough, both Liberals, and like, are you aware of like what like kind of role you're going to be playing and stuff?
Probably more of a supporting role this time around. These are not MPs I'm very familiar with, so that'll be a fun new experience for me. I'd be happy to take notes if I'm needed for that. I'm told I'm usually a good note taker.
Okay, so you're very good at note taking, so they kind of like, hey, you should do this. You're good at it, and but since you don't know the MPs, you're kind of like maybe in this instance you're like maybe kind of supporting more so.
Yeah, and of course I'm going to do some background research tonight. I just got an MP for one I just got a bio for one session that I just joined, so that'll be fun and new. But yeah, I'm happy to be in more of a supporting role this time around.
Mm-hmm. So you're going to be supporting this time around more so, and then you're going to maybe do some research to kind of aid the process.
Yeah, of course.
All right, so let's. Are you planning on kind of doing like any talking at the meeting at all, or what do you think?
Oh, I'm sure I will. In my experience, I say I'm happy to be in a supporting role this time because I'm the group leader back in London. When we lobby in the riding, it's often me and a few new people. So I'm happy to be in more of a supporting role this time. But often I find that when I take a group, when it's people's first time, they often will say, "Oh, I'm not going to talk. I just want to observe. I just want to see how this works." But then there's always that one point that comes up, or that one thing that the MP says. There's always that one connection. So I'm sure that I'll say something. I don't know. I don't entirely know what my role is going to be, but everyone always fits into the conversation one way or another.
Absolutely. So then you know that somehow one way or the other you're going to be able to like say something now. Maybe what might be interesting for this conversation is to actually look at some of your lobby work in London, like even away from this conference, where maybe you will take a bigger speaking role. What do you think?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So can you like maybe set the stage for me a little bit? What would your lobby scenario look like in London?
Okay, so, well, to be perfectly honest, so I started the group 3 years ago, and I built fairly strong relationships with the 4 MPs in the London region. Peter Fragascatos, who's my MP, he's a Liberal. Kate Young, also a Liberal. Irene Matheson, who's an NDP, and then Karen Vecchio, who's a Conservative. And I've met with all of them several times. Right now, at this present moment, it's been a while, but I'm hoping to set up meetings with them in the next few months, taking back a lot of the conversations we've had at this meeting and a lot of the skills that we've learned. And I'm also in the position where some of my previous volunteers either graduated from Western or moved away or got busy with a new job. So I'm also looking to find some new people to join me. So I'm hoping to just kind of rekindle that relationship and, check in with them. We've always had a positive experience lobbying with the MPs in the London area. So I look forward to bringing a lot of the conversations that we're having at this conference back to the riding with me.
So it almost sounds like you're in a sort of a regenerating kind of standpoint, like some people who are in the group have left and you're like trying to bring in new people, and then you also want to like regenerate some of these relationships with MPs. It sounds like you've already met with a lot of them anyway.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so like who's one that you're thinking, like maybe if you were to pick one of them that you think where motivational interviewing might be an appropriate strategy, which one would you kind of picture you might want to try it first with if you were to try it?
So I think I'd probably try it first with Peter Fragascatos, who's a Liberal. He's the MP for London North Centre. He's just been renominated as the candidate for the riding going into the next election. And he is someone who I mean, without repeating things that are said in lobby sessions, of course. But he's always been supportive of the work that the CCL London chapter does, even though it's not specifically the carbon pricing portfolio falls a little bit less directly under his purview. He's done a lot with foreign affairs and more of the international profile. But I definitely think that some of the motivational interviewing techniques that we've learned about in the last couple of days, especially with regards to encouraging MPs to make connections with other MPs or to find out who they can work well with and who they can build bridges with. I definitely think that Peter and I could have some productive conversations from that perspective.
So an approach maybe that might be interesting to explore is, it sounds like he's kind of already on board in a lot of respects. So then maybe the next step in the relationship is actually trying to maybe get him to connect with other MPs who maybe aren't on board, and then trying to channel influence through him. Did I get that right? What do you think?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, that was a close-ended question. Bad. Okay.
No, good.
So, and then that also was me derailing myself. So you shouldn't do that either.
It's like improvising.
If you were to like try to use some of the motivational interviewing like concepts, maybe like to use in towards that objective, what would that actually look like for you in that meeting? Do you think?
Well, I think one thing that was eye-opening for me yesterday was the conversation about the reflection when you say back to someone a sentiment that they've said. I think that that's just not a technique that I had heard articulated before, and so I would like to try that out, especially because I mean he's somebody who's very knowledgeable. He takes his career very seriously, and so he has a lot of valuable things to say, and so I think that there's a lot that I could learn from reflecting some of his points back to him and continuing the discussion in that way.
So then by using a reflection, you could kind of throw back to him and then see like where he goes with it, see if you can kind of learn more and deepen the relationship type of a thing.
Yeah, definitely. And I think sometimes I don't remember ever walking out of a lobbying meeting and saying that was awful or just that was bad, but sometimes what I hear myself say is I couldn't really get the lay of the land, and I think that's just a part of that is politicians doing their job, and saying the kinds of things that they're supposed to say, that the party leaders are telling them to say. But I do think that some of the motivational interviewing techniques that we've talked about, including the reflection, can help to open the door for having a more nuanced conversation.
Yeah, so then this could really open it. Like, what do you think you might be able to do, like, if you were to like really prepare yourself to try to go do something like that? What do you think would help you to feel like maximally confident to be able to go into that meeting and say, I think I can do a reflection here and not feel like,
Well, I think it would definitely be good for me to practice on someone who's not a politician in a lobby meeting, especially because I do worry about if I do the reflection poorly, coming off as sarcastic or like I'm saying things in jest when that's not the case. So I think maybe not even necessarily asking a friend, hey, could I motivational interview you? But just keeping in mind some of these techniques we're learning and working them into conversations. I think that would be a good way for me to feel more comfortable applying them in a lobby meeting.
So one plan for you to be able to practice your reflection would actually just be not going full on motivational interview on like your friend Becky, but to rather like just maybe people that you're talking with, just, I'm going to, instead of what I might normally say, I'm just going to give a reflection back instead.
Yeah, I think that would be worth trying. And hey, if Becky wants a full-on motivational interview, we can try that too.
Yay, Becky. So I mean, it sounds like, here's actually maybe even the semblance of the start of a plan, which is like, if you were to do this, maybe one way to start might be speaking to this MP Peter, something I can't remember the.
Pragastatos.
I don't think I can. Peter F. And like connecting with him and you know, trying to use maybe not even a ton of reflections, but maybe just you know, a few reflections, testing it out in one meeting, and maybe preparing yourself to do that by using reflections in some normal conversation. Is that kind of the plan we were thinking? Would it?
Yeah, I think so.
So like, if you were to like set like, when would be the right time or the first like baby step to actually make that plan be a reality, like right now, or like in the what time setting? What do you think?
I mean, I suppose I can probably start trying to set up meetings, you know, as soon as this week, because we all know that those can take some time. But I mean, in terms of practicing motivational interviewing, I don't know if my seatmate on the train back to London is chatty, then I could start right then.
So I'm also on the VIA train, so I'll try to not sit next to you so you can have that opportunity. But yeah, so like even, you know, really whenever you want to is what I'm hearing. Is this like a plan that you think you'd like to commit to, or, you know, I don't know, what do you think about your plan?
No, yeah, I think it is a plan I want to admit to. I think one of the questions I have been asking myself, because you know, as you observed earlier, now I've met with the MPs in the London region a few times, and generally the meetings have gone well. But I have been asking myself, well, what next? And so I do think that trying to use the techniques we've learned to have a slightly different kind of conversation could really be a positive step. And so, yeah, I do think that this is a plan that we can move forward with starting now.
Okay, well, I mean, thank you. That concludes our time.
Thank you.
So cognizance of time and, you know, the MC here like approaching. So I just want to make sure, are we doing Q&A or are we passing? Or?
Is there any pressing questions you please ask? No, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. Wow. Great day. Great day. Everybody agree? So thank you. I want to thank Cathy once again for putting this together and getting us the guests we got. So Cathy, thank you very much. I want to thank the organizing committee. Great job, organizing committee, yes. I want to thank our guests. What a great list of guests. We had fantastic guests this time. So thank you very much, guests. I want to thank all of you for attending, and I want to thank all of you who are sticking around tomorrow and the day after to lobby. So thank you very much. Cathy, you get the before last word.
I want to save as much time for Angie's beautiful voice. I always forget to thank Gerry, so this year I didn't. Yay! Thank you, Gerry. It is so much fun working with you. We just make it work, and it's magic. It's magic, because there's so much magic in the room, and you help us harness that, so thank you. To my nephew, thank you. I'm sorry, I should have said to Joe. Thank you. Can all the speakers please stand up? Everyone who spoke, like all the guest speakers, just, can we just give them a big, huge round of applause? Thank you, thank you, thank you. The parachute team, please stand up. We hoped for 10, we got 40. Please. Pardon? Yeah, pictures from this morning are on Twitter. That is fantastic. And to my fellow conference team, is Cathy Lacroix still in the room? She's having a nap. That's adorable. Okay, I just could not have done this without Cathy, Marlo, and Gerry. I lean on them so much. This starts we'll start planning next year's stuff tomorrow. And this is 9 months in the making, serious work. So thank you, all of you. And everybody who fed us comments, because most of this was decided by all you. We didn't make this up. We really take your comments seriously. Like David, you just came out of nowhere. He's also a CCLer, and it's just awesome. Okay, I could go on. So I said all my thank yous, and our friends south of the border, they're having a hard time, and they're looking to us, and they are so thrilled that we're going to have the first carbon fee and dividend policy on the planet. It means the world to them. So kudos, Canada, and US and Canada will just keep pulling each other along, and it's going to work. Just have faith. And this partnership that we've had for 8 years, thank you for being with me on this journey with them. So Marshall said we're making the impossible possible, and our policy resembles carbon fee and dividend more than any other policy in the world. And this part feels very un-Canadian to say, but I think a lot of people in the room will agree, and Mark Reynolds tells me I have to say it. No, he doesn't. But humbly, if we weren't here doing this work, this wouldn't be happening right now. So everybody, thank yourself. The most important thing in the next couple of days is we're going to be having world-changing conversations, and we have been just armed with the best ideas, and we'll continue to have them. And we're about to get out of our comfort zones akin to jumping out of a plane, but we have the parachutes. So have fun with those tomorrow. And some of you know my story, and I have to say it again. I made a promise to her, and I'm keeping it, and you're helping me keep it. We're gonna do it. I just feel so beyond words. Love you all. Thank you. Okay, Angie, please. Okay, well, they'll just do a little sound check and. Okay. Oh, what we're gonna do? No, we're gonna do a housekeeping after. The housekeeping will be after. Sorry, totally housekeeping afterwards. Thanks. I didn't want to lose the flow.
That totally turned out to be the best day of my life, guys. Thank you so much. And I can't wait for what's going to happen next. I'm not going to talk too much. I think everything will be explained in the song, and it was chosen by Cathy Orlando to end like this. So and I think she had the right idea. Here, that's my second coffee I dropped today. I spilled. Have a great night, you guys. Nope. Oh, for crying out loud. That was such a perfect moment, but here we go again. You guys are so understanding now. Everything works out exactly how it's supposed to. Even the mistakes. All right. There are people who have started planting gardens in their backyards, engineers designing newer houses from the scrapyards, buyers who are slowly becoming more aware of the businesses who share in responsible ways. There are restaurants who won't support the scraping of our oceans, farmers treating livestock like they're one of God's creations, soldiers who can understand the innocence and truth in the face of every child. There is still hope, there is still light, there is still good in each and every one, even if it is a long shot. May I always be one of a million who still believe. There are people finding ways of sharing wealth among all nations, doctors seeking out affordable solutions, companies who've stopped releasing their emissions regardless of Kyoto, regardless of the cost. There are governments allowing cars to run on other fuels, nonpartisan words spoken in the public schools, children urging parents to seek peace among the races, peace among their neighbors, and peace within themselves. There is still hope, there is still light, there is still good in each and every one, even if it is a long shot. May I always be one of a million. One of a million. One of a million. There is still hope. There is still love. There is still good in each and every one, even if it is a long shot. May I always be one of a million who still believe. There is still one of a million, each and every one, even if it is a long shot. May I always be one of a million. There is still hope. There is still light. There is still good in each and every one, even if it is a long shot. May I always be one of the million who still believe. Good luck tomorrow, guys. Thank you.
Thank you very, 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 very much. Wow. What a way to end up. Now, what's this? Yeah, another, at least another round of applause, not two. Get up. Are we doing encore?
I can do definitely do
Okay, she's gonna do an encore for us. How's that?
Over. Okay, you take care. I brought this keyboard because I had the perfect song for the first part, but my little tech problem I had a moment. It wasn't Joe's fault. It was all my fault. Sure, thank you. And that's enough. Sweet. Is keyboard turned down? Yeah.
Go down?
Yep.
Great. Yeah, no more of that. Once is good.
Okay. Don't forget to buy CDs. I'll be around. This song is not on a CD. This is just a fun song that I thought we should play together. Where's that mic stand? Where's the other mic stand? Oh. Okay. Here it is. My mic stand I always use this crummy one with the pink parts. I love you so much. Okay, here's your part. Here's your part. I get this from Bruce. It feels like like I'm 41 now, and I find as I'm getting older, I really do just do what I want. So I really appreciated all the advice and all the ideas about how to do this. But in the end, probably going to do what I want. Might not be the best thing, but we do have a good intention, and I'll try my best. So I get you to try to sing along. Your part. She does what she wants. She does what she wants. Your turn. Yeah. 2 more times. You got it. Okay, so that's what you have to do 4 times when the time is right. Okay? Some people ask if I have babies on the mind. At 40, I shouldn't be taking my time. They tell me how they had their first at 22, and there's no more important job I'll ever do. And I thank them in kind for their good advice. Promise to talk to my husband tonight. Walk away feeling like a debutante. In the end, I'm gonna do what I want. She does what You're good. You can call me selfish, you can call me naive, you can tell me all the reasons I'll never succeed. Up until now, I just chose to believe everybody had the answers except for me. And so I choose not to argue or taunt, I just smile and nod, and then I do what I want. Yeah, you got it. Sure, it doesn't always work to my advantage. Some bosses like to micromanage, but as soon as they leave, I just get the job done, doing it the way that I want. She does what she wants. You got it. Some say I shouldn't write my silly hip-hop rap. They say, come on, Ange, you're better than that. And shouldn't you be thinking how you're gonna retire? Buck up and admit your career's expired. And I thank them in kind for their advice on art. Hold my tongue to make them look smart. Completely agree, I have no money to flaunt. And then I head to the mic and do what I want. She does what she got it. As I get older, I've come to depend on everybody's advice being great for them. But I'm one of a kind. Personalized, I got my own set of values, truths, and lies, and I can listen as long and as hard as I can to someone else's version of my master plan. I'll smile and nod from here to Vermont, but trust me on this, I'm gonna do what I want. She does what she, you got it. Yeah, one more time. Yeah, she does what she wants. I do what I does what she wants. Love you guys. Thank you so much. Have a great night.
Okay, group shot. Everybody up. We're doing a group shot. So to organize this somehow here.
Okay, we need somebody to take, don't worry, we're gonna do housekeeping after the group shot. Don't worry, we're not going anywhere. We're here till at least 5, some of you till 6. So can somebody start helping Joe with this? So, and then I need help from getting a little bit of stuff pushed back on the stage. Be careful of that table. And I need about 10 chairs lined up along here. 10 chairs. Oh, the kids aren't going to be in the photo. What a shame. 10 chairs, please. Yep. Oh, be careful of that. Sorry about that. Put that under there. Nobody trips. Nice and, no, but people have to stand behind it. Yeah, they do. Oh, wow. Wow, Ange. That was, sorry about it being like, at the end.
We get to work together tomorrow. I know we didn't even talk about it, but I just trust that.
Yeah,
we'll meet you. We'll meet you on the field, right?
Yeah, out on the. Yeah, we'll meet maybe 15 minutes before. It's just a photo op,
Right.
Because I've been working with them forever.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, like there's nothing to lobby anymore. I know what they need, and they know what they need from us. And,
Okay, so we're just hanging out.
Yeah, we're hanging out. Great. We're gonna play with the parachutes.
Okay, well, we'll meet you at the parachute.
Okay, I'll be there probably at least 15 minutes beforehand. So at least. Okay, that was so good. I hope you get lots of gigs like this.
Oh,
I do like for environmentalists. Like I don't know if you've ever done this, come to a climate conference and sang in between, but you were perfect.
I'm going to ask people. Yeah, I've never done it before.
How many people here think Angie should do more climate conferences? Like, yeah. Like what, isn't that beautiful? Like, wow. Okay, so let's start lining up, sitting down here. So we need people to sit here. We need people to stand behind them and turn in. Watch yourself on this stage. Watch the wires. There. Oh, nice. We'll make it a different photo. So start sitting down. Wonderful. Sometimes a little bit of a curve ain't so bad. Please get seated. She does what Oh, yeah, everybody in the photo, please. It would be helpful, you know what? It would be helpful if there were about 5 people who would volunteer to sit on the floor. It would make the photo so much better if there were people sitting on the floor. Yeah, floor sitters are so welcomed, except for in front of that. Yeah. That's a pretty good shot. Okay. Yeah. Oh, I'm going to get somebody to take the photo. Oh, but okay, we'll switch. What about the lighting? Yeah. Yeah, bear with us as we get the lighting a little bit better, okay?
shortest time it's ever taken us to organize a picture. It's amazing. Cathy. Is there one more? No?